Well, welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. You know, if you live in America and you're a citizen of America and you wake up during the day, you're going to break some law. Guaranteed. Every day, because there are 500,000 laws that have been passed by agencies of the United States, not by the Congress, by agencies, 500,000. It makes us a nation of criminals, and we have a shocking story of an outreach or overreach by one of the federal agencies. We'll bring that to you as we talk about the nations of criminals. But worse than that, though, the people of California are suffering. It is the worst forest fire in the history of the state. And from both ends of the state, you think of that little town of Paradise, gone, completely wiped out, off the map, gone. I mean, the whole town of 20-some thousand, gone. And they're down in, Malibu, some of the premier residences. It's really north of Sacramento. It's one of the deadliest fires, as we said, in the state's history. And with the death toll rising, hundreds of people are still missing. It's a tragedy. We need to pray and just send our love to California because they need it. Terry?
Well, meanwhile, as Pat mentioned, flames tore through Malibu mansions and working-class subdivisions, forcing about 250,000 people to evacuate. Mark Martin has the story.
The fire in Northern California is known as the Camp Fire. It's left massive destruction about 100 miles north of Sacramento.
They're all around me. What do you mean? There is nothing left.
The Camp Fire has burned more than 100,000 acres and destroyed thousands of homes and buildings.
There ain't nothing to go back to. We're basically homeless right now.
Take a look at the town of Paradise, California. Burned out vehicles are on the roads and the local hospital is destroyed. Governor Jerry Brown is calling for a major disaster declaration.
This is not the new normal. This is the new abnormal. And this new abnormal will continue, certainly in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years.
President Trump urged California to improve its upkeep of forests, tweeting, "With proper forest management, we can stop the devastation constantly going on in California. Get smart." As thousands evacuated, more than 200 people remain missing. Meanwhile, the Woolsey fire in Southern California rages on, leading to mandatory evacuations for 250,000 people. That includes all of Malibu. The wildfire leveled multi-million-dollar homes.
Do not return to your homes. The evacuation zones have not been rendered clear or safe by first responders.
Some of the thousands of firefighters battling the Southern fire have called it a hurricane of fire. They've already been fighting the flames for days and are preparing for the situation to get worse. Mark Martin, CBN News.
Well, you know, the name California means hot coast in Spanish. Wow. It's a hot coast, but I don't think anybody in the early days has ever dreamed that it would be like this. But those Santa Ana winds coming in to intensify those flames, 40 and 50 mile an hour wind, casting a wide blanket of ash all over the state. So anyhow, it's going to take a miracle of God. Maybe a serious rainstorm might put those things out, but right now, I don't think there's any, they're putting huge tankers at work to try to drop fire suppressant water and other chemicals on the fire, but it's just incredible. I mean, years ago, I was out in Montana doing a firefighting thing with the Forest Service, and it was nothing compared to this. This is so, and the firefighters, they're all in danger. If those things shifted a few degrees, suddenly those guys are trapped, people are trapped, and you see that little town of Paradise, all those cars are burned. Please pray for California. I know what you may or may not feel, but pray for them. Well, it's happening again. The other side of America, it's not a firestorm, it's a storm of election controversy with national implications. Ephraim Graham has more of our top stories from CBN News. Here's Ephraim.
Pat, for most of the country, the midterm elections have come and gone, but they're far from over in Florida. A statewide recount is underway to decide the Senate race and the governor's race. And the recounts come amid charges of fraud and incompetence. Amber Strong has this look at the votes still being counted.
Only they will vote.
In the Sunshine State, the battle for the ballot is getting downright ugly.
Bill Nelson's a sore loser. He's been in politics way too long, 42 years. He just won't give up.
The state is in the midst of a bitter recount, including the races to decide who heads to the governor's mansion and who resides in the Senate. Sunday, Florida's Secretary of State announced a recount, which triggered automatically when the GOP leads dropped to below 0.5%. On election eve, GOP candidates Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis seemed destined for victory, but an onslaught of late votes from Broward County and Palm Beach County closed the gap. Republicans are crying foul.
They didn't report on time. We still don't understand how they went in these two counties and had a dramatic increase.
The Florida courts agreed there was improper action, charging Broward County officials failed to turn over ballot records. Now Scott is filing a new motion against both counties, hoping to impound and preserve all voting machines, tallying devices, and ballots when they're not in use. Democrats contend it isn't fraud, but democracy at work.
No one should stand in the way of the people of our state exercising their right to vote and to have their voice heard.
The Florida Department of State also says it has yet to receive any credible allegations of fraud. But Broward County has been plagued by accusations of political incompetence in years past. While Democrats say it isn't over until every vote is counted, Scott says he's moving forward.
We won. The citizens of the state won. I'm going to be going to D.C. and I'm going to do exactly what I did in Florida, try to change the direction of the country like we tried to change the direction of Florida.
And right now, even the recount seems to be in trouble, as some of the 67 districts fear they won't be able to complete the recount by Thursday's deadline. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Meanwhile, another Senate race seems to be slipping from the Republicans' grasp. In Arizona, Democrat Kristen Sinema has increased her lead over Republican Martha McSally. Sinema now leads by 37,000 ballots, or nearly 2% of the overall vote. The Cook Report has declared Sinema the winner, with about 200,000 votes still to be counted. House Democrats are wasting no time announcing their priorities when they take over in January. They say number one is challenging acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker and his authority over the Mueller investigation.
He should recuse himself for any review of the investigation because of statements he has made already in the public domain.
Some charge Whitaker's appointment is unconstitutional because he's not been approved by the U.S. Senate. But President Trump's advisor, Kellyanne Conway, said the president's lawyers approved it. While the Democrats are not talking about impeachment, they're expected to launch investigations into the Trump administration. Congressman Adam Schiff told Axios on HBO, Democrats will investigate if the president used instruments of power to punish the press. Pat?
Well, a press man is misbehaving during a press conference and won't relinquish the microphone and keep shouting at the president. So he's used his power to, no president should, he's the top man of the United States, and he needs to be respected. I don't care what you think about him. But in any event, ladies and gentlemen, this Mueller investigation, they have had hundreds of thousands of documents. They have interviewed countless witnesses. They have gone hither and yon. They have had like a hunting license throughout this nation to do whatever, and they've had virtually an unlimited budget. And when it's all finished, despite the fact that he has hired a team of pro-Democrats to conduct the investigation, they have had no evidence, and I use the term advisedly, no evidence of collusion with any Trump campaign and any Russian entity. And that was what their mandate was. They haven't found it. Now, there have been interrogatories given to the president, and he has answered them. They have gotten that, and there's a press release coming out by the two attorneys that represent the president the next day or two that's going to say, you've got all you're going to get. This is the end of it. And I think Mr. Mueller, Bob Mueller, is going to cease that investigation before maybe Thanksgiving, but certainly before Christmas. It's all over. He's done everything that he's been authorized to do. And once that's done, then you don't need lawyers and the Democrats adding to an appropriation measure a proviso that says we've got to protect the Mueller investigation. It's all over, folks, and they need to understand that. And this Whitaker is a fine gentleman, and he is certainly legitimate. He's holding his office as he should. And I think what's going to happen is after the Mueller investigation is wound down and he is sent to the Attorney General, I guess to Ron Rosenstein, he's going to send his finding. It's going to be confidential. He'll send it to him. That's the end of it. And for the Democrats to be fulminating about we're going to add all kinds of legislation to protect it, it's nonsense. So just keep that in mind, folks. That's the lay of the land. That's what's going to happen. And I would think once Mueller is gone, Rosenstein will be gone. Matt Whitaker is an excellent man. He'll be running the Justice Department. And then there'll be others, consideration for a permanent replacement. And he might be it. I don't know whether the rules will allow him to do it, but he doesn't have to recuse himself from anything. So in any event, keep eyes, but don't listen to what all these people are saying, because there's a lot of smoke going on that's just nonsense. Ephraim.
Pat, we want to turn now to the ongoing immigration controversy. The number of immigrants illegally crossing into America with their families is skyrocketing. In October, more than 22,000 parents and children were caught at the southern border. That's 40% higher than any month on record. A growing number of those migrants are coming seeking political asylum. It's creating a serious crisis for Border Patrol agents who have to deal with that surge. As Chuck Holton now shows us, the approaching caravan will only make matters worse.
In 2017 alone, more than 330,000 migrants made asylum claims, and less than 40% of those were found to have merit. The current system has been unable to keep up with the flood of asylum seekers, which has led to a backlog of more than 800,000 cases, according to the DHS. Now, with several large caravans making their way north to the U.S. border, the Trump administration is deploying more than 7,000 troops to help. Their commander, Northcom General Terrence O'Shaughnessy, recently toured the South Texas border to see the need firsthand.
We've been given a very important task to help harden the ports of entry and try to make sure that our Customs and Border personnel can handle the vast numbers that we're expecting to see in this migration.
Okay, so this is downtown El Paso. We're right on the border fence here. That's Juarez, Mexico, across the Rio Grande there. You can see the river is very shallow right now. You can walk right across it very easily, and many people do. They do that in this area a lot because this fence is what they call the old tortilla curtain. It's so easy to breach in today's environment that it needs to be replaced, and that's actually exactly what they're doing. If you look over here to my right, you can see some construction going on. That's them in the process of installing new and much more substantial fence, but that's not part of Trump's border wall. The reason that they're putting this in now is because this area has become really, really busy with migrants crossing illegally, and when they do that, it's extremely expensive for the American taxpayer.
I mean, we're starting to see diseases that we hadn't seen in decades here. Smallpox, chickenpox, all of that. You add that to the cost of the removal proceedings. You add that to the dangers that we as a community face, and people don't realize that.
The Trump administration recently announced a new measure to discourage illegal border crossers. Anyone caught entering the country illegally will not be eligible for asylum. It's a controversial move, but it doesn't mean the migrants will be turned away. The military on the border is working long hours to help the Border Patrol prepare to handle thousands of legal asylum seekers.
Specifically, they're initially looking for that engineering capability that will allow us to harden the points of entry and make sure that we are able to provide barricades, provide an ability for them to be able to process large numbers of migrants that will come in.
The men and women of the Border Patrol are very glad for the help, but they say in the long run, what they really need is a wall.
If you just look, I mean, to cut through this is going to take a lot more than it is to cut through with just, I mean, I could use my Leatherman, I could take it out, and I could cut through that. This, I mean, it's been repaired all the way through. It's just section after section like this where it's been cut.
By entering the United States at a place not designated as a port of entry, you are committing a crime. And we need to make sure that in the metropolitan areas we have the best barrier we can have to give us the right amount of time so that we can prevent, persuade people not to come across, and if not, then we can make a safe apprehension. It buys us time.
In the meantime, with more than 1,000 migrants a day attempting to cross the Rio Grande, the Border Patrol will take all the help they can get, and the U.S. military is answering the call. From El Paso, Texas, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
1,000 migrants a day. Pat?
Somebody's paying for that. Somebody is putting up the money. There has been a flood, an absolute flood of money into the Democratic coffers during this past election. It is unbelievable how much money has been spent. You look at that one election in Texas, it was just appalling how much hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars was spent, the most in history. And I dare say somebody is funding all of this stuff. We talk about Libre as a group down in El Salvador or Honduras, but I don't think it's just one or two radical organizations. I think it's well, we don't know, for example, who, but somebody's putting up big money because these people have to be fed, they're housed, they're given literature, all this stuff. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, Latin America has got a lot of people in it. Hundreds of millions of people, and they can't all move to the United States. It isn't that we don't love them, it's that they're not nice people that we don't want to associate. We want them to be free and have a wonderful life, and we want to do everything to help them. But we cannot afford to take on people who have disease, people who don't have any jobs, people who are not working. We can't, no nation can do that. It isn't that we're not compassionate. We are compassionate. But we can't be forced into something. And unfortunately, the Obama administration let the bars down and actually welcomed people. And then the Congress has refused to act. We must fix the immigration law. I mean, what are those people paid to do up in Washington? They've got to pass a serious legislation. They haven't been able to do it. And there's so much politics involved, and they won't put in a comprehensive immigration law. We are a nation of immigrants, let's face it. All of our ancestors, except the Indians, came from somewhere, and we didn't start out in this country. So there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, we've got to do something to pass comprehensive immigration. It isn't just a wall, it's Congress to act. They were going into a rump session right now. There's no reason they can't put this through at this point of time. Ephraim.
Pat, world leaders marked the 100-year anniversary of the end of World War I in Paris Sunday. President Donald Trump joined French President Emmanuel Macron and dozens of others to celebrate the day. More than 66 leaders gathered in Paris for the occasion. President Trump also visited and delivered Veterans Day remarks at the American Cemetery and Memorial outside Paris, where more than 1,500 Americans who died during the war are buried. World War I ended at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. In America, November 11th is Veterans Day, when we celebrate the services of all members of our armed forces, past and present. Today, many government offices are closed in observance of Veterans Day. The CBN News Channel has special Veterans Day coverage. You can see how one branch of the military trains men and women for service. Follow the stories of 4 young recruits as they undergo training to become sailors in the United States Navy. You can check your local listings and CBNNewsChannel.com for the Veterans Day documentary, Making a Sailor. Pat?
Well, thank you very much. And for all of us who are veterans, of which I am one, we are grateful for a day. But it's a shame they don't have Veterans Day on Monday instead of Sunday.
Yes. Well, I guess technically we are. My granddaughter's out of school today, and lots of schools
got it as a holiday.
closed, but not businesses.
Yeah.